Hello again, and welcome to the Love Monday podcast. We are up to episode 13, and today's episode is Here's Why You Suck as a Manager. Yes, this episode is for managers, particularly and specifically sucky managers. Now, I realize sucky managers probably aren't going to be listening to this. They're not going to be looking for something like this, and then they see the title, they'll be like, that's not me. I don't need that. But if you have a sucky manager, you'll probably just want to share this link with them. And then you might want to block them on your phone, and you might want to take a 2-week vacation so that they have time to cool down, because that's going to kind of indicate to them that you think they're a sucky manager. But if you are listening to this now because this link was shared to you, that is probably an indication that whoever shared it with you believes you're a sucky manager, and probably other people on your team think that too. So just buckle in, just listen. It might help you out. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of things here when it comes to managers that suck, because a lot of them do. And so if you are a sucky manager, if this was shared to you and you're listening to this because, well, you suck, or people think you do, I'm not saying that's true. They might just want to give you a little bit of help here. So just relax, just listen, just be open, take a deep breath, maybe count to 10,000 by 13s. Something that's going to occupy your mind, get you to cool down, and just think about what this could do for you, because I'm going to share some very helpful information to you for you as a manager, so that your people can love Monday just like Friday, but for a different reason. They're just trying to have a much better life for themselves, for others, maybe for you too. So let's just see if we can all help each other. Now, of course, I'm being tongue-in-cheek about why you suck as a manager. If you're listening to this, well, you probably already turned it off because you don't want to hear that you suck as a manager. I'm just using strong words to capture people's attention. And that's all I'm trying to do. I don't believe anybody sucks, and I believe everybody can be better. But honestly, there are a lot of managers that are bad out there, and they're not getting the training they need. They're not getting the support they need. And that's what I'm here to help you with. If your boss is struggling, you don't have to forward this one, but you could forward the whole podcast to them. And there are going to be some things that will help them. Now, they'll probably stumble onto this episode at some point and think, maybe I am a sucky boss. Those are the things I want to help with. I want to help everybody be better, because I think everyone can be better. This is going to be something that if you apply these principles and listen, you'll be happier too. You really will. Not just your team, but you'll be happier too. I promise that's going to be the case. So let's get right into this. Let's jump in and see why you might suck as a manager. And we're going to talk about two major concepts here. First, we're going to explore how you became a manager in the first place. And if you're listening to this and you're not a manager and you have a sucky manager, we're going to talk about how your manager got their job. So there are a few primary reasons people go into management. First one is they started the company. They're the entrepreneur. So if you're a manager who's listening to this and you suck, you are the one who started the company. You're the entrepreneur. You had the idea. You are leading the company. You're the boss. And that might not be a good idea. There's an article in Forbes. I'm not sure when it was, but I'll quote it here. And I'll give you the title so you can look it up. The article in Forbes is called One Key Reason Entrepreneurs Don't Make Good Managers and Vice Versa. It states in that article, a great manager excels in critical thinking and judgment. These are high-level mental functions that underlie the ability to plan and strategize. A highly developed capacity for critical thinking shows itself in the demonstrated ability to anticipate first, second, and third degree consequences of an action or decision. So that's what it's talking about. Great leaders can do that. Entrepreneurs often succeed because they don't think about the consequences of their actions. They plow ahead against all odds, damn the torpedoes. If you think too much about what could go wrong, you'll be paralyzed. And that's kind of what makes entrepreneurs so successful. But that article goes on to say, entrepreneurs it says that in that quote, entrepreneurs typically don't think about the first, second, and third degree consequences of a decision. They can't. And that's why they would make a sucky manager in the ongoing operations of that business that they started. The best thing for an entrepreneur to do is either get out of it, sell it to somebody else after you get it up and running, or step aside and let somebody else manage the business, even though you were the brains behind the business. Don't be so blinded by your great idea that you can't see that somebody else might be able to lead it better and then help you reach your potential with that idea and that company. So that's the first reason somebody becomes a manager or a boss, because they started the company in the first place. The next one is you're a family member of a person who started the company. So you're not the entrepreneur, but you're the son or the daughter or the brother or the spouse of whoever started that company. In this situation, the only thing you did to merit the role of manager is that you were born in the right place at the right time or married the right person at the right time. If the person who started the company puts only family members in as managers, you have a double whammy of a bad leader of the company and a bad manager at the department level. Because the reason the leader at the top is a bad leader is they don't see that this isn't the best option for leadership in the company. They're just employing family members. And really, they probably just got into the business to employ their family. And so they're not really interested in the success. And so if you're a manager whose dad started the company, you're probably not the best one. Now, I'm not saying that's exclusive, that those two are mutually exclusive. I'm just saying it's not often likely that you are the best manager for a business that your mom or dad started. If you're one of these managers, you might disagree with me, of course, but there's one way you can be sure. Have your people take an employee engagement survey. If it reveals that your team is engaged, you probably don't suck that much. But since 70% of the variance in employee engagement is attributable to an employee's direct manager or supervisor, and if you find out that they're not engaged, well, then you probably suck as a manager. So again, second reason, you're the family member of a person who started the company and you're the manager. Now, I've been in this situation. I have family members and friends who are frustrated in their jobs because their bosses suck because they're in a family business and they're in the family business and only the family members get the management spots. And so when you have that situation, it doesn't lead to very good outcomes. I can give you story after story of this situation. For the leader of that company to think that their gene pool runs so deep that the best leaders in the world are all in their family is pretty egotistical, to say the least. If you don't believe you have that deep a gene pool and you still insist on giving your kids and spouses and brothers and sisters the leadership roles, and you're willing to run the business that sucks and will never reach its full potential. So you're running a business that's just going to suck, basically. And if it doesn't suck, it's at least not going to reach its full potential. If you work for a business like this and you're not the manager, I suggest you turn in your 2-week notice tomorrow when you go in, because it's bad and it's not going to get any better. It's never going to get any better. And so you may not have a place to go, but you're in such a bad situation that the sooner you get out of that, the better. And you probably find something else very quickly that will be better than the situation you're in. It may not be perfect, but it's going to be better than the situation you're in. So quit quickly. That's what I'm telling you. Now, that may sound foolhardy. And if you can't do that, at least make plans to quit by a certain date and give yourself a deadline to find a new job. The third reason that you became a manager, and if you suck, here's another reason why you might. You were the top individual contributor on the team, and so they made you the manager. So it was somebody's bright idea to say, oh, well, they're the top individual contributor, they're the top performer on this team, then they'll be a great manager. That is a fallacy, and it almost never works out that way. I'm not saying it's mutually exclusive again. I'm not saying that the top individual contributor could not be a great leader, but it's highly, highly unlikely, because if they're the best at being an individual contributor, then leadership is a completely different skill set. And you're never the best at two things. You're better at one or the other. Now, in those situations where a top individual contributor became a great manager of the team, it's almost always that they became the top individual contributor because they knew they had to do that to become the manager of the team. And if that's the way the organization is run, they always promote the top individual contributor, then you've got a sucky organization with sucky practices for getting managers into place. But those are the situations, the rare situations where the top individual contributor becomes a great manager. They only became a top individual contributor because it was the path to management. All right. Oh, and I got some examples there. In fact, I'm looking at this and I'm having a conversation with somebody who's in the food industry. And I've looked at this for a long time, and I look at the position of chef in a restaurant. Traditionally, that is the person who's the best cook. But does that make them a great leader? No. And usually it doesn't. My son, who's worked in the food industry for years as a sous chef, I would say from the stories he's told me, and he doesn't tell me this, but I've been able to deduce myself that from the stories he's told me, he's had one chef that he's worked for, maybe one chef that was passable as a manager. The rest of them sucked as a manager. And again, not their fault. This is the same as, this is the top individual contributor role. They were the best cook. They were so good at it that they said, we'll make you the chef. That is not a good process. Now, I know that's the tradition, and that's how it works in the majority, 90 or better % of the cases in the restaurant industry and the food industry, that the top cook becomes the chef. But if they're a horrible leader, why would you do that? Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that anywhere else. Well, some companies do. They always make the top individual contributor the boss. Bad idea. You're better off to have the top individual contributor, the best cook, just remain the best cook and pay them what you have to pay them to keep them there, but don't make them the boss. If you've got somebody else who exhibits better leadership, make them the kitchen manager if you're not going to make them the chef, but maybe make them the chef. Who cares what it's called? But it's ridiculous that we continue to do this and put people who are unqualified to be leaders as chefs in a restaurant. Now, that's just one example, but you could take that to any industry where the top individual contributor becomes the boss of the team. It just almost never works. Again, I'm not saying this is mutually exclusive and that if you are the top individual or you were the top individual contributor on the team and now you're the boss, you're a great manager, I would love to hear your example, but I'm willing to bet that you were the top individual contributor because that was your path to management. And if that's different, hit me up at ryan@lovemondaylikeFriday.com. I want to hear your story because I might want to interview you for the podcast. All right. The next one. The next reason is you were the top. You were at the top of your salary grade and had nowhere else to go. That's a common problem in some organizations. You reach that top of the salary grade and they say, hey, if you want to make more money, you're at the top and we can't bust through that salary grade unless you're in a different position. And the next one for you is management. So you're going to have to go into management. And when you do, we can give you a raise. Well, again, you're not going, if you're the manager because of that, you didn't go into that because you wanted to. It was your only hope for making more money. You either had to never make any more money or you had to go into management. Did you want to go into management? I'll bet you didn't. And if you did want to go into management, why didn't you go into management earlier in your career before you topped out at your salary grade? So there's an inherent problem there. If you went into management because you reached the top of your salary grade, I'll bet you were better at being an individual contributor than you are at being a leader. And you're probably not very happy there. Now, if that is not the case, if you were just an undiscovered leader and it took you that long to get there, then that is the rare, very, very rare exception to the rule that I'm laying down right now. The other thing is, if you became the manager because you were the top individual contributor and you got there just because of tenure, just because you outlasted everyone else, then that says something about your organization, that they couldn't retain anybody else. I'm not slagging on you that you're not a great person, but you're probably not the greatest leader. It's probably why you suck as a leader, as a manager. And if you need help with this, hit me up. But I'm telling you that the manager who got there because they hit the top of their salary grade, that manager sucks. And if you're that person, I'm telling you, a manager in that role sucks in 10 out of 9 cases. That's how serious it is. So again, if that's you, let's help you find something different. Hit me up again, Ryan at lovemondaylikeFriday.com. Go to lovemondaylikeFriday.com. Look at some of my free resources. Look at some of my paid for courses out there to help you get to a better place. The next reason you became a boss, and the next reason you may suck at being the boss or being the manager, is you became the manager because you want to be the boss and have all the power. You want to tell everybody else what to do. You want to tell them if and when they can go on vacation. You want to monitor their bathroom breaks. You probably harass them emotionally, maybe even sexually, regardless of their gender. You were the bully in the schoolyard. You can't retain employees unless you beat them down so far that they feel like they have no confidence and they have nowhere else to go and that they don't deserve anything better, just like an abused spouse or child would feel. You suck as a manager. If you became the manager because you wanted to be the boss and have all the power, then you suck as a manager. I'm just going to go out there and say that. I know that seems like a bit of a generalization, but if that's not the case, again, I want to hear your story. Reach out to me. Send me an email, Ryan at lovemondaylikeFriday.com. I want to hear your story because I want to interview you. I might even want to put you on my podcast as the rare exception to the rule of you became the manager because you want to be the boss and have all the power, and you're a great boss. I'd also want to talk to some of your people to confirm that you're a great boss. And I want to talk to them without you on the call because, if you were the schoolyard bully and now you're the workplace bully, I don't think I'd get a really good, accurate representation of you as a boss if you're listening in. So tell me, though, reach out to me, Ryan at lovemondaylikeFriday.com. I want to hear your story. The final reason that I can think of that people become a boss is that you, and this, if this is you, you want to develop people so that they can succeed and you can help your organization succeed. You want to develop their skills and their talents so they can fit in your organization well, and then your organization can fit in the market very well. If that's you, if this is the reason you became a boss, then you don't suck as a boss. I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to guarantee you don't suck as a boss because you went in it for the right reasons. When I coach people who want to become a manager and they say, I want to go into leadership in my organization, I need some coaching because you've been a manager for 25 years. You've figured this out. You've cracked this nut. You know how to do the job. I want to learn what you know. They come to me for coaching, and one of the questions I will ask them is, would you take this job for a pay cut or for a lateral move and it's with no pay increase? And some people say, absolutely not. I would never do that. Why would I do that? It's the manager. The managers get the big money. If that's if they say that they would absolutely not take the job for a pay cut or a lateral move, then I tell them you're probably not fit to be a manager because you're going in it for the wrong reasons. You're going in for the money, for the power. You're going in for reasons that are not leadership. That's just the bottom line. So I know some of this stuff is harsh. Some of it sounds like I'm talking I'm overgeneralizing and I'm talking in absolutes. I'm just telling you that I've seen this over my career, and I've seen these situations where people became managers for these reasons. And I have yet to find exceptions to these rules because I have the caveats in there where, well, if this person's a great manager, there was this little variable. But if you take these reasons at face value, those managers almost always suck in 10 out of 9 cases. So there you go. Those are the reasons people become managers. So with that, what talents and skills do great managers have that you may be lacking because you became a manager for the wrong reason and you suck? And if you suck as a manager, you probably lack some or all of the following skills that we're going to talk about. And I read an article called Why Great Managers Are So Rare, and it was published by some of the lead scientists at the Gallup organization. They did a lot of study on management and what makes a great manager. This was like a longitudinal study that happened over decades, and they've got a lot of data on this. And one of the things they found, well, I'm going to read right from that article. So again, it's called Why great managers are so rare. If you Google that, you'll be able to find it. I'll put it in the show notes as well. Management talent, this is from the article. Management talent exists in every company. It's often hiding in plain sight. Gallup has found that one of the most important decisions companies make is simply whom they name manager. Yet our analytics suggest they usually get it wrong. In fact, Gallup finds that companies fail to choose the candidate with the right talent for the job 82% of the time. So I'm going to pause in my quote right there and repeat that. Gallup finds that companies fail to choose the candidate with the right talent for the job 82% of the time. Think of all the managers you've had in your career. Did you find maybe 18% of them were good managers? Because what this is suggesting, this statistic is suggesting, is that 82% of managers out there are not fit for the job. They don't have the talent they need to be a great manager. And so when you think about that, think of your current boss. If you are the current boss, think about yourself. Think about the boss you've got. How many managers have you had that are really great? And we're going to talk about the talents that these great managers have in just a minute. But think about that. 82% of the time, companies choose the wrong person to be a manager. And if you're a manager and you suck, your company made the wrong choice. Is all lost? It's not. We're going to talk about this because if you don't think I'm just going to get out here and rail on sucky managers, do you? I'm going to give you a way to get out of being sucky. We're going to talk about that before we're done here. So interesting quote there. I'm going to continue with the quote. Again, this is from the article, Why Great Managers Are So Rare by Gallup. You can find it out in Harvard Business Review, and you can find it at gallup.com as well. Just Google Why Great Managers Are So Rare, and you'll find a version of this. Further, this article goes on to say, bad managers cost businesses billions of dollars each year, and having too many of them can bring down a company. The only defense against this problem is a good offense, because when companies get these decisions wrong, nothing fixes it. I even have a t-shirt that says, nothing fixes a bad manager, nothing. Businesses that get it right, however, and hire managers based on talent will thrive and gain a significant competitive advantage. What are the 5 talents that managers need? What are the 5 talents that are outlined in this article? I'm going to go over them right now. Number 1, they motivate every single employee to take action and engage employees with a compelling mission and vision. Number 2, they have the assertiveness to drive outcomes and the ability to overcome adversity and resistance. Number 3, they create a culture of clear accountability. Number 4, they build relationships that create trust, open dialogue, and full transparency. And number 5, they make decisions based on productivity and not politics. So those are the 5 talents that Gallup found in great managers that they find in only one out of 10 people have these 5 talents. And so that's what they say in the opening line that I quoted there. Management talent exists in every company. It's often hiding in plain sight. What they mean is 1 in 10 people have these 5 talents, but they're probably not the manager right now in most cases. And so that's something to consider. So if you're a sucky manager, if you got this forwarded to you from somebody on your team, because as you listened to earlier in the podcast, I was urging people, if they have a sucky manager, to forward this to their managers. So if you stumbled onto this because of, well, you didn't stumble onto it, it was sent to you, but if you just stumbled onto this and you fear you might be a sucky manager, again, look at these 5 talents. So let's break this down a little bit. Do you, as a manager, if you're a manager listening to this, do you motivate every single employee on your team to take action and engage them with a compelling mission and vision? Do you do that? Are you able to do that? Do you do that with every single employee? Or do you do that with the top employees on your team? Maybe a few of those in the middle, but you're not trying to engage with a compelling mission and vision those people at the bottom, are you? If you are, great. You're probably not a sucky manager. But how do you engage them with a compelling mission and vision? First of all, you've got to have that compelling mission and vision yourself. Do you believe in what you're doing? I have worked with lots of companies. I've worked with lots of managers. I've worked with lots of teams. And I was consulting one company once, and I talked to one of the top executives in that company in a private one-on-one session. And that top executive said to me, between you and me, I'm not that engaged here. We were talking about the engagement survey we just taken that I'd helped administer in that company. And he said, between you and me, I'm not that engaged here. And if I could do anything, I'd go do X. And I said, well, why don't you go do X? And he said, well, I'm in here. My spouse has expectations. The family has expectations. The company has expectations. And it's not that easy to just leave. I think he's now the CEO of that company. But if you don't have that compelling mission and vision, if you're not engaged yourself, you're not going to be able to instill that mission and vision with somebody else. You have to be bought in and excited about it yourself. So if you don't, and you're not going to ever be able to engage your team with a compelling mission and vision. So you might want to rethink your role on the team. Should you be the manager? Should you be the leader? Maybe you should go back to being that individual contributor. It's not the end of the world. But if you can't engage every employee with a compelling mission and vision, you're not a great manager. I'm sorry. Number 2, do you have the assertiveness to drive outcomes, or are you afraid of people either above, below, or to the side of you? The assertiveness to drive outcomes, that's the number 2 talent that great managers have. Do you drive outcomes for your team? Do you drive outcomes for the organization? That means you're going to have to be the unpopular guy with your peers sometimes, with customers sometimes, with your team sometimes, with your manager sometimes. You have to have the assertiveness to do the right thing regardless of who might disagree with you. A great manager will do that. They're not just a yes person. A great manager will have the assertiveness to drive those outcomes. Next one is, do you create a culture of clear accountability? Or are some of the people slacking on your team and getting away with it? That's what we're talking about here. Do you create a culture of clear accountability? Do you hold people accountable for doing good work? Do you know when they're doing good work? Because if you can't tell, because you don't have data and metrics to tell you when they're doing their jobs and when they're doing them well and when they're doing them poorly, then you're not going to be able to really hold them accountable. And if you have that data and you're still not holding them accountable, that's a real management failure. And that's another reason you might suck as a manager. Do you create a culture of clear accountability? Do you hold people accountable? Do you have the hard conversations when somebody is not pulling their weight? Because if you have an employee engagement survey and sometimes there's a question out there that's something like, my fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. And if you're getting low scores on that, you're not doing well on this manager talent. This is one that you probably do not have because you are not creating a culture of clear accountability. Because when people disagree with that statement in an engagement survey, it's typically because someone is slacking and getting away with it. So what are you doing to create a culture of clear accountability with every member of your team? Next one is, do you build relationships of trust and open dialogue and full transparency? Do you build those relationships? Do people have a safe haven to come talk to you about things? Or do you bully them? Or do you belittle their opinions? Do you listen to their opinions and then blow them off and ignore them? Or do you have full transparency and open dialogue? Do they come and they can tell you anything and you can respond to it? Maybe you have the answer today. Maybe you don't have the answer today, but you still circle back with them and say, you know that thing you told me about or this tool you needed? I can't get it to you this week or this month or maybe even this year, but it's in the budget for next cycle and we will get it for you at that point, or we will resolve this issue on X date. We're working on it. But you have to have that full transparency, because if you don't have that, you're going to kill those relationships of trust, and you're not going to have open dialogue if you don't have full transparency. And there's literally nothing you can't share with the team. You might have to swear them to secrecy so that they don't give away any trade secrets, but if you don't have full transparency, you're not going to have relationships of open, trusting relationships and open dialogue. The next talent that great managers have, do you make decisions based on productivity or politics? This is an interesting one. When you have bad news to give that came from above, how do you present that to your team? Do you present that by saying, the boss told me I got to tell you this? Or if your team objects to something, are you brave enough to take it back to your team? Or are you, if you make a decision that has to do with the business or people in the business, how are you making that decision? Is it based on productivity or politics? Are you giving people opportunities to do more, not necessarily promote them to be the manager if they're top individual contributor? We know how well that works. But are you rewarding the people the most who are the most productive and not rewarding the ones who aren't, even if they're more politically connected than some of your top contributors? You can't make decisions based on politics. If you do, you will undermine your authority, the trust of everyone, and people can see right through that. So that's the fifth one. Do you make decisions based on productivity or politics? Pretty simple to make them based on productivity if you have metrics that tell you who's the most productive, and you have metrics that tell you when your team is productive and when they're not. To be able to say, when someone comes and says, we're going to have a layoff and we need to let go of 2 members of your team, do you know how productive they are? Can you make the case that you need to not lose 2 members of your team because these team members are valuable to the company? Let some other manager lose members of their team. I did this repeatedly in my management career. We would go through kind of marginal layoffs where a few people would get let go from time to time. But I made sure I knew how well my team was performing, and I could make the case in front of my peer managers and my boss to say, I can't let anybody go on my team, and here's why. And I almost always won that debate. So again, make your decisions based on productivity, not politics. So what do you do if you suspect you suck? I know this has been kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's honestly true. If you're a manager and you're listening to this, or you have a manager and they're not listening to this, well, first of all, why didn't you forward this to them and share it with them and say, hey, I think you need this. I know it takes courage and bravery, and we don't always feel like we can do that, but let's go back. If you suppose you suck as a manager, I want you to see how you're doing against these 5 talents that we've just talked about. How are you doing? Have some sort of 360-degree assessment where your direct reports are giving you feedback, your peers are giving you feedback, your manager or leader is giving you feedback on how well you're doing on these 5 items. Do something as simple as a stop, start, continue type of feedback. You could just send that in an email and have people, if they don't feel comfortable sending it back to you, have them send it to your boss so that you can get some feedback on this. On these 5 items. How strongly do they agree? Set up a survey in SurveyMonkey or some other survey tool. Get information on how well you're doing against these 5 talents that great managers have. The other thing you can do is do an employee engagement survey. And you need to do an employee engagement survey where you will get results for your team specifically. Now, a lot of these engagement surveys will have a minimum requirement of respondents of 4 or 5 people. So if your team's smaller than that, it's going to be a challenge for you to get information just based on your team. But I urge you to be able to find a way to do that, even if you have to create your own survey. You want to know how people are feeling about engagement. Now, if you need a survey, a company that I'm affiliated with, Bridge Learning and Performance, look up Google Bridge Learning and Performance and you'll find this. They have a great engagement survey, and I evangelize this all the time. I take this out and speak to companies and speak at events about this survey and the other Bridge tools, which are great manager tools, the best ones I know of. But they have a great engagement survey that gives you lots of information as a manager. So if you don't have an engagement survey, look up Bridge Learning and Performance. There are others out there that you could use, though. You could even go with something like the Gallup Q12 that you could administer yourself. But again, you have to have at least 5 respondents. There are 4 respondents for the Gallup, 5 respondents for the Bridge survey. Not sure about some of the other surveys. I don't know that off the top of my head. But I would get out and get an engagement survey. Find some way to measure engagement for your team. And then you'll be able to know whether or not you're sucking as a manager or being pretty good or being really great as a manager. An engagement survey will give you a wealth of knowledge. So that's what I wanted to share today. Why you suck as a manager and how you can be better. You've got to get better at these 5 talents that we talked about. You got to be honest about how you became a manager. And if you fit into one of those categories, it wasn't the bottom one, the best one. And that best one is that you really wanted to help people progress, develop, and help your team and your organization go farther and be more productive and be more effective. If you became the manager for any other reason than that, you might have some tendency to suck. You may not completely suck, but you'll have some sucky tendencies. If you want to know more about this, reach out to me. Hit me up at ryan@lovemondaylikeFriday.com. Go to lovemondaylikeFriday.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. I really appreciate when you subscribe, listen, and then give me feedback. I would love to hear that. Send it to that same email address, ryan@lovemondaylikeFriday.com. And I will catch you on the next Love Monday podcast. Drops every Monday, so don't miss any episodes. Make sure you subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.